Hello, friends. This is the Clueless Filmmakers Podcast. Thank you for joining us today. I am Weston Cross, and I am here with...
Caitlin Walton.
And we are here to discuss the adventures of a bunch of BYU interns in LA and all of our fun things that we've learned in our stumblings and discoveries and horror stories so that you can learn from what we have learned. That said, let's kind of just jump into things. Caitlin, please tell us what brought you to LA. What are you doing? And in particular, what have been your goals coming into this?
Well, I think it's safe to say the film industry brought me to LA.
Oh, yeah, let's say.
I always kind of thought I would try LA. I wasn't super invested in it, though. I always kind of thought I like academia. And so I actually that was sort of a plan for a while, but I got married and my husband wanted to try LA and I was like, well, I'm fine with that. So I kind of am along for the ride, but that doesn't mean I didn't want to come. It just means that I came faster than I thought I would.
And just so everybody knows, Peter is sitting on the couch like 2 feet away from her. So he can't be too offended by that statement. It was said in his presence.
That wasn't an offensive statement at all.
He's nodding his
I
head.
loved him enough to come. No, so I always wanted to come to LA, but it was one of those things where I wasn't 100% sure that I wanted to come to LA and when, but when his plans brought him out here, I was like, well, I always wanted to try it at some point, so why not now? Because he's here, so I'll come. So that kind of makes sense. I was going to come anyway, but it wasn't originally going to be this summer.
Might as well do it at the same time, because at the very least, it's better than a 3-month separation from your fairly new husband.
Well, yeah, that was kind of a thought. Well, so
but no, that's great way to do it.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I always thought, oh, I'm going to do LA. If the opportunity presents itself, it would be a good experience. But then I got more into producing, and so I thought, okay, definitely want to try LA at some point. But I wasn't really sure how LA worked, like when would be a good time to go, how long before you graduate you should go. Like none of this stuff, I didn't know any of these things. I just kind of thought, oh, I'll do an internship at some point. So it worked out really nicely that at the same time I was thinking those things, I actually got married, and then we both could start solidifying our plans together and kind of figuring out how the whole LA thing worked together. If I hadn't gotten married, and I probably still would have come out, maybe not this summer, maybe the next summer, because I still have some school left, but I would have come out at some point. But that's what brings me here this summer, so, I mean. So
it was at some point or another, just Peter helped make it happen now instead of at a later date.
Yeah, and it kind of helped me solidify my decision to come out because, there's a little bit of fear involved in moving to a place all by yourself with no one you know. Having someone there is kind of nice.
What are your goals coming out here?
Yeah, I'm one of those people that has so many things they want to do, and that can be daunting at times because it's like, what do I focus on, right? So right now I'm doing a producing internship. I am interested in producing. So that helps a lot with that. I also am really interested in post-production sound. So while I'm out here, I'm also working on my own personal projects with that. At some point, I'd like to see about getting a post-internship here to more explore that realm. But my goals are most likely going to end up in the post world because that's what I enjoy, I think, more at this point. But who knows, that could change. I'm just, right now, I think post is where I'm leaning towards, specifically sound.
Things can change. I mean, that's part of the reason why we come out here is to see what we like. Maybe your internship will change your mind. Maybe you'll want to lean more towards your stuff. You don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, so far I'm really liking my internship, but it's hard to definitively say I'm going to give up sound for producing. And you don't have to, especially out here. You don't have to do one thing. It's just sometimes stressful. Well, not really stressful. It's sometimes daunting because you want to focus all your energy on one thing at school because you only have so many time a day for so many classes. But when you come out here, you can, you have all this time. You can work on many different things at once. I don't feel as limited.
That's good.
That makes sense.
No, it does. It does. That's excellent. So this is a fantastic growth experience this summer, and it's barely even started. Like, we haven't even been out here a month, and you're already things are going well and you're learning, and you still have 2 months to discover yourself. Self-discovery. That's the word I was looking for. This is a great summer of self-discovery.
Hopefully you like what you find. Tagline.
Yeah, that'd be terrible. Like, oh, I went to LA and discovered I hate myself.
I went to LA and discovered I'm a monkey. I don't know. Don't include that. That was weird.
I feel like I'm not going to remember to edit that out. I'm sorry.
Well, I just reminded you.
Yeah, I'm going to forget magically.
I'll text you. Anyway, let's continue.
So, moving on to our next subject. Will you please... Oh, no, actually, before we get to that, have there been any fun insights that you have gleaned from this internship about the industry, about the company? Of course, again, nothing super insidery that you can't disclose, but just like going through your work like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know my company did that, or this thing was a thing.
Well, I work for a company that finances independent films and sometimes is involved in creative aspects. It depends on the project. Mm-hmm. Something I've really found interesting, which it's not surprising, but the scope of it kind of hits you a little bit, is just how much, not just how much money it takes, because you always know, these movies are these huge numbers for their budget, but it's how many people, how many companies, how many different areas like get financed through so many different people, like especially indie film. I mean, studio film probably works different. I don't know. I'm not, don't have any information on that, but these indie films, like there can be so many people that are putting money into the pot per se to fund these films and have different interests, and are some people just put the money in, some people put it in and like work with them creatively. It's the scope of it when you see it broken down is just kind of like, wow. And when you see where all the money goes and how they decide what films to make depending on what the potential for it to be sold is before they even like green light it, they like what they look at.
Oh gosh, the analytics they look at.
The analytics are crazy, and like it all makes sense, of course, and like this like in the back of your mind, but when you see it all laid out, headache. You're just like, wow. I mean, it's so detailed, and they have like formulas that they go through to see what's going to be profitable and what's not, as far as how much money puts in, how much money they get out. That's why before they even start talking about script details and rewriting and everything, that's just looking at the idea and like the genre and then kind of like plugging it in and seeing what comes out. Like it's crazy. And then at certain points, they have to make the decision, like, is this movie going to work as an independent film or does it have to be a studio film? Like, I mean, it's just like there's just so much to it that it really kind of boggles your mind a little bit, and then you realize why these people that have business degrees are doing so well in the film industry, because they know how to do these things.
It is a crazy, difficult to navigate labyrinth of how these films get financed and made. It is surprising. Yeah,
so I mean, like I said, I don't understand I don't have like a huge grasp on it, obviously. I mean, I'm just looking at basic things that I've seen, but if you want to be in the financial aspect of funding films, you probably want to get some experience in the business world. Yeah. I mean, a lot of, one of our presidents of the company comes from a banking background, and that's been really helpful. He understands that world. So.
Banking.
Yeah. And like, that's not like an isolated story. A lot of these people that are in the higher up positions that work with greenlighting films and the financials, they come from business backgrounds.
That makes sense. It takes a ton of money to get some of these films, especially nowadays. Like a standard action film is like $100 million minimum. Otherwise, you're gonna go nowhere most of the time. And
we expect a lot from these films as an audience. We expect a lot, so that's why you probably don't see indie film companies making huge budget sci-fi films as much, because it can't compete with the studio thing. So like comic book movies right now are huge, and studios are doing an amazing job with like the production value of it. They also have development teams that are working on scripts with like the comic book source they come from. I mean, indie companies that are going to try comic book stuff can't really compete on the same level, so they have to find something different if they're going to try and do comic book, because you can't compete with, Marvel right now.
No. There's
even DC
Warner
comes from a
Brothers
studio.
DC is trying, yes.
And they're a studio, and they can't compete as well because they haven't laid the groundwork that Marvel has. I mean, there's just so much to it. So, you're not going to see indie companies trying to compete with certain things that the studios do, because they know that their market, like what they're going to be successful with, is stuff that is different from what the studios are doing.
And all this is you just learning from just basically just kind of cracking the door open on the industry, and this is so obvious, very upfront stuff. This is really neat stuff that you're realizing within the first month.
And part of it is just looking at what's out there. So when you can go online and look at articles of who's doing what, and you can kind of see that trend just from looking at development announcements. So if you go on Variety or Hollywood Reporter, they'll say so and so's bought the rights to this, these people are attached, and a lot of times the indie studios are doing true story films or something that's a drama that has something unique to it. There's a lot of stuff they do. I'm not gonna try and pigeonhole it, but it's different from what the studios are doing a lot of the times. The big studios, they're doing Marvel, they're doing sci-fi films, it's different. Just from looking at those things, you can kind of see trends.
Very different. Well, wonderful. Thank you for that insightliness, Caitlin.
Yeah, you're welcome. And also, just as a reminder, like I said, I'm not an expert on these things. That's just my observation.
Again, this podcast is called the Clueless Filmmakers Podcast. We are not professionals. I fear for the day probably in which I would ever be considered a professional, because that'd be a bad day, a point when I'm quote unquote a professional, because that's scary, because I could never be that. I will always be, clueless, I feel.
You'll always be Weston.
I will always be Weston.
Unless you go on a journey of self-discovery and find out that you're not.
And find out I'm a monkey.
Well,
that hates myself.
Turn around and look at the wall. There's a monkey.
Oh, and that's my monkey. That's my monkey on the wall. That monkey follows me everywhere I've ever moved.
Yeah, so it wasn't like I just came up with that out of nowhere. I'm staring right at one, too.
Okay, well, thank you for that insight. Move on to, it's funny we talked about that so much. Our main topic that I wanted to talk about today was finances and preparing oneself for coming out to LA, budgeting, setting aside money and whatnot. And then, of course, once you get here, how that might adjust according to what you quickly discover about your new environment.
That's a big question. So, the first thing you have to think about is housing and what your personal situation is. So, you are out here, Weston, with a friend, subletting in an apartment together. Mm-hmm. So you split the cost. Mm-hmm. So that works for you. Mm-hmm. And okay, so I guess
let's mainly talk about your experience.
Right. I'm trying to to compare it. So
okay,
if you are doing what you guys are doing in subletting, you are paying month to month on a year contract that someone's already purchased, right? So what we did something different. We actually went to a rental company. We're doing month to month at straight through the company. So it works different than a year lease. Mm-hmm. So doing month to month is really, really expensive, because they're going to charge you a lot more for month to month than they are if you sign a contract for 12 months. So our rent ended up being a lot more than we expected when we first started budgeting where to live in LA because of that decision. Now, I don't regret that decision, because, it ended up being a really great thing for us, because we like where we live. It's a good commute. And it's hard to find housing from Utah for LA, I'm sure, as you can remember. Yeah. So budgeting for housing is really hard because of different situations. My advice would be, if you're coming out here just for 3 months, finding a sublet would be awesome, because then you're paying kind of a year lease monthly fee and not a hugely like jacked up price for month to month through the company itself, for the rental company. But yeah, so housing, I mean, it varies a lot. I mean, you can get anything for like $1,000 a month for a year lease to like $2,000 a month. Mm-hmm. And then if you can find someone to live with, even better. I'm married. Well, we're married, I guess. So it's harder because we aren't able to share with somebody else through BYU rules. We can't share with anyone else. So we have to just find a place where we can both, you know, so we can pay the rent just for the two of us. Mm-hmm. So we can't really share. So that kind of makes it a little more spendy too, because of the no year lease thing, 'cause we're only here for 3 months kind of a thing.
A lot harder to find a sublease for more than one individual, because most of the time sublease people are like subleasing like one room, that they want one person in that one room. Right.
That's a challenge. And then also, like I said, even if we could, if you're going through BYU's internship, you're not allowed to if you're a student through BYU because of the honor code thing. Now, if you're not at BYU,
depends on like who. Yeah, sorry. Anyway.
But that's like if you're not at BYU, like it doesn't matter. I'm just saying like they have a certain code for their interns. So yeah, that just depends. Like I said, housing situations vary a lot. Other things to budget for is food. It's more expensive here. Mm-hmm. We did not think about budgeting for parking, and you should, because I've ended up having to park in a lot of parking garages that cost money per hour, kind of a thing. Even the mall where we like next to where we live, you have to pay per hour if you want to park in the underground lot. So I was parking like the far above ground lot because it's free. So I can walk. I'm able. I'm not going to pay.
Yeah. And by the way, you said that in your original budgets before you came out here, that's not something you budgeted for. And then as soon as you got here, you immediately had to adjust your budget. So by the way, so you actively have a kind of month-to-month budget that you lay out like a responsible adult should. Because
kind of.
I don't.
So I have a budgeting system. It's like, what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry. Let me start over. I have a budgeting software app that it's called mint.com.
Oh, Mint is way cool.
I've also used You Need a Budget, but I didn't like that quite as much. I don't remember why. I just remember using it for 2 months and then being like, I don't want to use this anymore, so I went back to Mint. And that directly uploads how much money I have in my bank account, both my bank accounts, even like my savings account. And then it also shows up all of the transactions from our cards. So you can kind of put in where it goes. And I kind of monitor that. Like I do. I have like this much money a month for the different categories. I haven't like put parking in like a separate category. I just like think about the fact that I'm going to need it and put it kind of in like the extra petty cash type category, because it's not that much. I don't spend like $100 a month on parking.
See, for me, I was kind of the opposite. For my parking situation, because my housing roughly comes out to $750 a month, and there's where I am off Hollywood Boulevard, as you experienced coming here today, there's no really good places to park. So I had to kind of buck up and find a place where I'm paying $144 a month just to have a suitable, stable place that I can always park and know I can always go there to. So I kind of tacked that on to my housing. When I came out here or started looking for places, after talking to some other people, I budgeted myself to have $1,000 set aside per month for housing. Of course, trying to get lower than that. Did you have kind of any numbers, the two of y'all, that you were kind of like aiming for, budgeting yourself for?
Yeah, I mean, we started thinking 1,000 would be great, but we kind of knew we'd have to pay more than that because of like not splitting a place.
Yeah.
At first, we actually did find a place for $1,000 a month, but you'd have to sign a year lease, and we weren't prepared to do that. No. So we actually passed on that and ended up doing the month-to-month thing, which ended up being a lot more. So we kind of were thinking between 1,000 and 1,500. Now we actually ended up doing a little more than that, but the reason we did that is because our complex, being a good commute, it also offered free underground guaranteed parking. Like we are assigned spaces, and that became kind of a valuable thing to us because we have 2 cars. Mm-hmm. Having 2 cars, trying to find 2 street parking spaces every night.
That would suck. It would be very stinky toes.
Very difficult. So And our situation is also a little different. We have family out here who scouted out places for us, which helped. So that they kind of like found us a place and said, hey, do this. And we're like, okay, we're so sick of looking at housing. You know what? It's not too far out of our budget. We'll just do it. Luckily, we have some savings and things like that to help us out. We are still paying rent on our place in Utah, though, as well.
Oh, that's extra fun.
That's extra fun because we couldn't sell that contract because the way our no subletting allowed. And they would find out at our apartment. So obviously we're not going to like break that rule. And also you had to give so much notice that like it was like 4 months notice to sell. And we hadn't really thought about it. And they changed that rule right before we left. So we're like, well, I guess we're not selling. So
gosh,
it didn't happen.
Provo housing rules.
Yeah. So it was difficult, but I mean, we're managing. We'll be fine. I mean, we're not going to be starting when the contract ends in like a month, we won't be paying for 2 anymore. So it's only for 2 months.
That's good.
But not fun.
Yeah.
So selling your contract back home would be ideal. It just didn't work out that way for us that we were able to.
Yeah.
Which is actually pretty common in Provo, not being able to sell your contract.
Yeah.
So if you're going to come here from Provo, plan on that.
I got incredibly lucky. My contract ended the end of April.
Oh, wow. That's actually really lucky.
Yeah. And then on top of that, when I first moved in, I paid like last month's rent. Mm-hmm. And so I just left it. I didn't even call him because I hate my landlord. He's just a turd. And it's funny because I'm probably going to move back in there. But he's still a turd. I just left a note in place of like a rent check that said, hey, you have my last month's rent. Use that.
Well, that's risky, but... it works
for
you.
It worked. And then I was semi done with that place. Anyway,
cool.
So carry on with what you were.
So as far as budgeting goes, I mean, we've sat here talking about housing a lot for the past couple of minutes, but housing really is the number one thing because then comes gas. We have 2 cars, so gas is kind of a thing we have to think about a lot because we commute every day. My drive's the same as Peter's, about half an hour to Beverly Hills every day. Well, not every day. I only go twice a week, so that's not every day. But we buy gas in the valley if possible, where we live in Sherman Oaks, because everything is way more expensive as soon as you get into like the LA, like Hollywood area, Beverly Hills. It goes up a lot. So there's that. We try to buy most of our things in the area that we live because everything's cheaper there. As far as budgeting, other than that, I mean, we don't go out very much. I mean, we budget a little bit of money for going to restaurants, once in a while, and we usually share food because it's easier. So there's that. You can always do that. And then
one of those couples. There
are things, hey, they give you so much food at restaurants. Like, do you really need your own plate every time?
This is America. Yes, we do.
All right. Well, that is up to you. So, it sounds like I'm judging you. I'm not. I just don't eat as much as most people, I guess. I can never finish a plate of food. Anyway, so there's a few things that we knew we wanted to do while we were down here. Mm-hmm. So we're setting aside money for that. Like we went to the San Diego Zoo. That costs money. We, are okay with that. We want to do, we like to do Universal. So, that's on there as well.
Oh yeah,
things like that. Harry Potter Land.
Harry Potter Land, whatever. I'm gonna kick
so we'll
myself
see.
out and go
I mean, we don't want to spend too much money doing stuff because it's a lot of money.
It is.
But
everything out here,
we want to do a few
crazy.
things.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Budgeting is a tough one because it's all about what your lifestyle is and where you end up. Because you pay for parking. We don't, but our rent's more expensive, and then like you can kind of evens out once you have to add your parking onto that. So, my advice would be find a place where it fits your needs in a way. So like you found a place to park. A lot of places don't have that, and they do have to use just street parking. And if that's something you don't want to do, like find a place closer to a parking garage that you can buy a monthly pass at, and just be prepared to pay for it.
All right.
But a lot of people live in places where street parking is the only thing, and they make it work. They
do.
So,
I don't know how, but those I'm gonna call them saints. Saints find some way to do it. Mm-hmm. Now I'm asking kind of I don't know if it's more general or more specific question, but did y'all sit down and together as a couple or individuals could do this, sit down and like look at your books and look at everything and think, can I do this? And just kind of have a plan out thing beforehand.
Well, we knew we were going to do this starting before we even really got married, like right before we got married last August. I mean, we kind of knew this was going to be a thing, so we've just been like saving for LA is what we would say. Trying to make sure we always put enough money away that we would have savings when we came out here. So it wasn't really an option of like, can I do this? It was like, how are we going to do this? We're going to make it work.
Make it work.
It has,
That's awesome.
it's happening. So we just, we have our savings, and we just are going to be using that. I mean, we looked at our books and said, well, we have this much in savings, so let's just find a way to do it. We are married, so here's a little tip. If you are married, you can apply for FAFSA. Is that how you say it? FAFSA, the federal aid.
FAFSA,
and you can get grants when you're married, and that helps because it pays your tuition, and then whatever's left over you can use for school fees. So the money that I would normally be using for tuition for next semester is going to be going to LA because I have a little bit of government help. So there's a tip if you're married. If you're not married, get married.
I think also after you get turn a certain age, it's easier to get some of that similar-ish sort of grants too.
Maybe. Yeah. I'm not sure. I just know about the married one because my cousin was like, hey, you're married now, do this. And so, that's cool.
Perks of marriage besides all the other ones.
And yeah, but it really does help. So if you're married and you are a student, you have to be a student, obviously, to apply for the federal student aid. But anyway, so yeah, I hope that answers questions about budgeting.
No.
It's really difficult to say because everyone's situation is different, but I would say plan on like $1,000 a month rent and hope to go lower. But if you have to go higher, you have to go higher. If you're coming out here permanently, like, great, sign a year lease for less because you can find something for like $1,000 a month for a lease. Not that hard. But if you're coming out here just for 3 months, find a sublet and try not to get scammed.
Oh, the scams.
Yep.
Oh, the scams. Jared and I had a hoot talking about that first one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anywho, thank you very much, Caitlin, for talking about all of that. Very insightful. Our listeners will surely appreciate them. Well, once again, we are going to end our show today sharing awkward moments, awkward stories to remind ourselves that we are all human. We all have awkward moments. There's no perfect people among us. Please, Caitlin, share with us an awkward story.
Okay, so I don't really like talking to strangers that much. I just feel like, why would they want to talk to me? I'm just some weirdo. So at our complex, we have a pool hot tub like area. So we went down to the pool area a couple days ago together, and we went and sat in the hot tub after a while. And so we're just sitting there and whatever. And then 2 other people came into the hot tub, 2 women, I would say probably in their 30s, and which is like fine. But Peter was getting done and tired and hot, so he left. And so I'm just sitting there with these 2 other people, and like normally it would be no big deal, but they started talking about some really personal stuff, like really personal things about their life plans for like having babies and things like that, and they got kind of like super into detail. I'm just like sitting there not talking to anyone. I got no one to be with, no one to talk to. It's
just
like
you and these 2 other women they're talking about
really personal
very
things.
Personal
and maybe they're just really open, but it's like fine. But the problem is that I have no one sitting there to like distract me, so it just automatically looks like I'm listening on their conversation. Nothing I can do makes it look like I'm not like eavesdropping. But they're not trying to hide it, so I don't know. I just felt super awkward about it because then I don't want to like get up and leave because after a certain time had passed, it was like that awkward moment where you're like, if I leave now, they're gonna like think that I was offended by what they were saying, or like I thought that they were being weird, or like it just became that thing where you just sit and suffer because you don't know what to do, because it got more and more personal the longer it went on. It became less of like, family planning and more of like the intimate details of family planning. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do right now because I don't care about what they're talking about, but I'm pretty sure they keep looking at me like I'm listening in. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? So I just sat there. So you basically had to sit there and wait until either they left or you died. Yeah, I mean, I figured after an appropriate amount of time, I could be like, oh, I'm getting too warm. It's a hot tub. I can leave. Peter came and rescued me, though. He like came over and he's like, hey, I'm kind of want to go upstairs. And I was like, great, time to go. And I like
Peter to the rescue.
made that escape. But like, it's not really like that awkward unless you make it awkward. And I totally made it awkward for myself because I didn't know what to do. I was just sitting there and I was like, if I leave, I don't want them to think that like they, you know, kicked me out of the hot tub with their conversation. I don't know. It was weird.
Okay.
So I think the moral of the story is if you overthink it, you make it awkward. Because I
do.
don't think they actually cared at all what I was doing, but I just thought that they did. Anyway.
Wonderful. That was a wonderful story. Thank you. I'm going to share. One of these days I need to set aside more time on one of these podcasts to tell longer stories. I have so many wonderful, long and incredibly cringe-worthy, awkward stories to share with all of you. But that takes too much time. So for a short one today, as we were setting up for the podcast, I had a delightfully awkward moment especially sitting here in front of Caitlin, who is one of the most talented sound techs that I personally know of. I have a fairly simple audio setup, and I was just testing some mics before we started going, and I was talking into the mic, which is, you know, goes through a little box thingy that goes into my laptop, and when I played it back into my headphones, it sounded like absolute garbage. Like garbage. Like, I don't have the nicest mic here, but what you're hearing now is, you know, decent quality. But what I was hearing was just like worse than listening to someone on a cell phone going through a tunnel. Like, it was crappy. And I kept testing again and again and again, filling with levels and how I was talking into it. Still was crappy. I even switched to like the other mic, and it sounded just as bad. And after like 5 minutes, maybe a bit more, an embarrassingly long time to sit here fiddling with this equipment that I've had for some time in front of Caitlin, I realized that I just simply hadn't adjusted the input on Audacity on my computer, and the mic that it was picking up was the standard mic on the laptop, like the crappy one that you just like Skype call your grandmother with or something, instead of, you know, the nice audio setup they have otherwise. So yeah, that was a wonderfully awkward, terrible moment today. Anyway,
Here's a secret, Weston. I wasn't even paying attention.
she was on her phone.
So you made it awkward
I could
for
feel
yourself.
your judging eyes.
I wasn't
from
judging. I
over
was looking at
there.
my Instagram.
Yeah. So thank you again, Caitlin, and thank you again to our listeners. If there is any listeners, I don't know if he's going to be listening to this.
The
I hope
monkey
you
will
are.
listen.
The monkey will listen. Andre, his name is Andre.
Aw.
Andre will be listening.
You named him.
Yeah, I did. He's so sweet. He's a nice monkey. So thank you, everybody, and have a fantastic day from the Clueless Filmmakers podcast crew.